Wondering how much business coaches make in a year? Wrong question. There are so many different types of coaches, and how much they're making ranges from nothing to millions of dollars. Revenue is truly in correlation with your marketability and your impact. So the real question you should be asking is there a need in the marketplace for what I offer? Am I able to create true outcome? And how much damn money do I want to make? What we know for sure is that when we look at businesses, we know that the majority of small businesses have not even reached 6 figures in revenue. I'm LizJSimpson, founder of the Big Money Movement, accompanied by
Cheryl Parks and Heather Patrick.
And at the Big Money Movement, our mission is empowering women entrepreneurs to successfully land 5- and 6-figure corporate clients. And the reason why that mission is so important to us is because when we look at the revenue disparity facing women in business, we know that women-owned businesses average about 67% less than their male counterparts, right? We know that only 12% of women-owned businesses in the US even reach 6 figures, and only 4% of women-owned businesses reach 7 figures. So we know that revenue has many different ranges that it can reach. When you are looking at how to achieve your goals and how much business coaches make, ask yourself, what truly is the value of that question? At the end of the day, I love Peter Drucker's philosophy when he says the purpose of business is to create a customer. So instead of looking to your left and your right, trying to find the stats on business coaches, focus on how you create a customer, what are the needs of that customer, how do you fill that gap, and how do you gain proximity to that customer to reach your own revenue goals. Cheryl, I know you're passionate about sales as well. What are your thoughts on that?
So the main thing is sales is a performance sport.
Right.
First and foremost, you have to be in the game to actually win the game.
Right.
Okay, so sales is a performance sport. We talked a little bit in previous videos about income producing activities where you're actually tracking your performance so that you know where your wins are coming from and your losses, and you're able to actually replicate what you're doing and scale it. So that's probably number one. Number two, in terms of it being a performance sport, the more you do, the better you will become. You have to actually be doing it. It is a contact sport. There is no shortcut. You're not going to get around it. You have to pick up the phone. You have to send messages out. You'll have to get used to people saying no and learning to ask follow-up questions and not take it personally and detach from the outcome.
Oh, yes.
If you can focus on the outcome and not be personally pulled into it, it's not easy to do, but you'll be that much better for it. And you'll be able to learn and figure out what you need to move forward.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question for both of you? When you think of the ranges of revenue, do you think that they're in direct correlation to the sales skill set of the business coach?
My initial reaction is yes. I do believe that the greater the sales acumen, the more value you can get from the marketplace, because you are that sales acumen is communicating the impact that you're making.
Yes.
And the greater the impact you can communicate or show proof of, the more income you can ask for it. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it does. I was wondering that. I'm like, when I look at businesses, I'm like, I just feel like from the individuals I know, like if I peel the onion and when I get to know some of the business leaders that I admire most, there always seems to be this commitment or awareness that I had to get really good at sales.
Right.
What do you think?
So I'm going to add a caveat to it because I totally agree with that, but I also think there's an access issue, right? So we don't all have access to the same. Social media has really, as you mentioned, has really leveled the playing field somewhat, but because we haven't had access to learning the things, sometimes having that conversation for one person is different than the other. So just the access, I think, is also, we have to kind of, understand that some people don't have access to the same things. And I don't mean like free tools. I mean, they haven't had access to a conversation where they had to use certain language.
Right.
They haven't had access to learn what that language looks like or sounds like. They haven't been in a room where people were talking about vision, right? And so I just think about that, and I think about the importance of learning that piece of it as well.
Yeah,
just so
like
that
business acumen.
Business acumen, the journey,
Okay.
understanding, conversations with executives, again, typically don't start out with what you do.
Yeah.
It starts out with what they do, and you understanding their language if you've never had that conversation. Sometimes all the sales acumen in the world doesn't specifically speak to your access to those conversations. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to kind of marry the two together.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So one of the statements or slogans I remember in business was comparison is the thief of joy.
Ooh.
I know you've heard of this.
Yes.
And this comes up for me when we're talking about how much money do other coaches make. There is also, there's a cartoonist that I'm a big fan of, and one of his cartoons is this toothy little picture, and it's of an individual that says, never compare your insides to someone else's outsides.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
And I took that so to heart when I was building my business that, you know, as a new coach hanging out my shingle, and of course I made those mistakes of like figuring out, you know, what Joe was charging down the street or Sally could command for her services, and finding, you know, what I thought was a middle of the road, which was completely wrong in hindsight. Instead of comparing myself to, you know, Joe had been in it for 20 years and Sally who had a, you know, 5-figure marketing budget and I did not, you know, what I needed to do was not compare myself to their outsides, but compare, like, to really understand who was my ideal buyer, what outcomes could I really promise to deliver, and what were their resources, and understanding that it's a combination of all of those factors. Comparing yourself to other coaches will rob you of the joy of the work that you do, and I would say keep you poor for far too long.
Yes.
I don't often do comparisons. I compare myself to myself, which is to, you know, my previous. But it reminds me of something my daughter will say. If she hears any inkling of comparison, my adult daughter will say, stay on your own yoga mat.
Yes.
Stay on your own yoga mat. Focus on you and being a better you, and all the rest of it will fall into place if you're doing the things that you need to do.
Yeah. One of the other things that I'm passionate about is so often as women, we look to our peers for a gauge, a measuring stick, a benchmark. And do we secretly think that we are better than the other person or not as skilled? And we'll price ourselves relative to that other person. Instead of understanding that it's our own inherent value and our unique buyer, that's where we really need to look internally, not externally, for those answers. And one of the things that I remember is when I was starting my business, right? And I think we've all been there. You got to start from where you're at.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, like, all of my peers were, you know, corporate and sometimes government employees who typically had the notion of, like, not paying a lot for professional services, particularly my not-for-profit and government-minded friends. And so if I had listened to them for long enough, I think I would have gone out of business. Because at some point, I had to start getting in the room with other people that had a larger perspective of value, of outcomes, and what they were willing to pay for. And when I got myself in the room where there was a higher level of conversation, and I started to get my eyes opened, like wide open, to other possibilities and other ways to assign value to what I was offering, and even understanding there are human beings in the world that value it even more than I do. Wow, that was mind-blowing. And I recognized, like, it's not about comparing myself to someone else. It's understanding, you know, what is my value? Who is my ideal buyer? How do they value my solution? That's a big deal. So get yourself in the right room and the right level of conversation.
Investment-minded, action-taking. That's the room you want to be in.
Your point, Heather, like, is stirring up something in my soul. It really is. I hope people will rewind and listen to that over and over again. Because we have this. Women join the big money movement and they'll say, well, I'm a health coach serving tech. Who are the other health coaches serving tech? And I'm like, why? What are you going to do that information? You're going to put a limit on the ability to have success in your business based off of what you don't even know her. Why would her business be the litmus for your success? Like, why would that be the litmus test for you? And to your point, the reason why I think the statistics are so telling, if only 12% of women have 6-figure businesses and if only 4% have 7-figure businesses, why would you care about what anybody else is doing?
The vast majority of people are not making the money you want. So why are we taking advice from them?
So why are you worried about what they're doing? So, I mean, just kind of realizing that. And it makes me also think, you know, speaking of, like, belief in possibility. It makes me think of, oh my gosh, what are we going to call her? We got to come up with a name on the spot. Janie. I'm going to say her name is Janie. All right. So Our movement is we empower women to get corporate clients. And Janie came into the movement and had never worked in corporate. She felt like she was at a disadvantage because she had never worked at corporate. And she was comparing herself to others who had never been in corporate to say, well, corporate won't see the value.
Yes.
And do you want to talk about like just the shifts in Janie's journey? Like,
can I please? I love this story because Janie legitimately said, I don't know what they would want from me because I've not been in corporate. And then as she went through her process and she followed it and she got next steps going and she understood the value and the outcome, she marched with the client to an agreement for her first 6-figure deal. And the reason they bought from her is because she had never worked for corporate. They wanted an outsider with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
I love
yes.
Gives me chills just talking about it.
Yes.
The very reason that she thought no one would come her way is the reason they hired her.
Yeah.
And I will say that I watched some of those recordings and she was stellar.
Yeah. And how many other women watching this, and I pointed myself years ago, have that same fear?
Yes.
Why would anyone in corporate want me?
Yes.
Will they even, they'll laugh me out the door, right? And that's what prevents us from seeing the possibility, jumping in the pool and finding the path.
Yeah.
I love this story.
And that's what when we say, what is someone else doing? And, we're saying, am I good enough?
Yeah.
And has someone proven possibility? And the thing like a Janie, I almost said her real name. The thing about a Janie is that the very thing that she thought was her disadvantage was the very reason that they wanted her. It's the thing that made room for her.
Yes.
And if you are watching this, what we want you to understand is that your gift will make room for you. It's your unique background. It's your unique experiences. It's your map of the world. It's your heartache. Those are all of the things that will create possibility for you. So you can't look to your left and your right. You have to bloom where you're planted, and do not compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. We would love to hear your success story and how you're forging a path based off of your unique blueprint and map of the world. Speaking of which, there are some skill sets needed to do what Janie did. Yeah. She had the big money movement in her pocket. So if you want to learn how to reach and land corporate clients, click the next video. We got you covered. We got your back. We'll see you there. Bye.